1 in 5 children in America is at risk of hunger, and too often their parents and caregivers struggle to put healthy meals on the table. At the end of the month, there's just not enough food in the fridge and not enough money to buy more. Low-income parents say that the cost of groceries is their biggest barrier to making healthy, home-cooked meals. But healthy food doesn't have to break the bank. Smart shopping skills can help put nutritious meals in reach for more families.
We're definitely going to get some new tips and skills. Some are going to come from me, but a lot of them are going to come from all of us.
Share Our Strengths Cooking Matters at the Store is a free grocery store tour that helps low-income families learn simple tips and tricks to buy healthy food. It's part of the No Kid Hungry campaign, which is ending childhood hunger in America by connecting children with healthy food where they live, learn, and play.
The Good Shepherd Food Bank's Cooking Matters Maine program brings Cooking Matters at the Store tours to Maine. Every store tour, regardless of where it takes place and how, focuses on 4 key food skills. And we practice these together to empower individuals to stretch their food dollars. These 4 key skills are how to read food labels, how to compare unit prices, how to find whole grain foods, and identifying 3 ways to purchase produce. Cooking Matters at the Store tours can occur in 3 ways. The first way is the traditional store tour, which is when a facilitator walks around the store with a group and talks about the different products that they find along the way. A second way is the pop-up store tour that uses props and can occur at any location to alleviate accessibility issues and to provide store tours where people already are. And the third way is the event day model, in which participants can come from anywhere, it is open to the public, and they have a self-guided tour of 4 stations that deliver the content around the store. A facilitator is stationed at each table and delivers that content as the groups come by. In this traditional store tour training video, we cover the traditional store tour, its model, the materials and content you'll need to cover for the tour, and some tips for effective facilitation. We'll start by talking about the model and how to navigate the store. The traditional Cooking Matters at the Store tour takes place at the grocery store and works ideally with 6 to 10 participants. We're going to start by looking at the flow that your group will likely take around the store, and then we will switch to getting into the details of each of those areas. To begin, you will likely set a gathering point where people will meet you. Typically this is at the front entrance. It might also be near the produce. This is where you will make your introductions, share the content and scope of the tour, and ask participants what they'd like to learn. It's also the place where you will introduce my plate. Since half the plate is fruits and veggies are a great area of the store to start at. The fresh section is also just one of the areas where you might find fruits and veggies. Frozen and canned aisles are also areas where you'll stop by later in the tour. Typically, you will follow whatever the layout of the store is as you walk around together. Often, as you come around the bend from a fruits and veggies section, you'll come across the meat proteins. Again, this is not the only place to find protein in the store, but it is a great location to discuss lean proteins and different varieties of proteins in that area, as well as what groups might find elsewhere. As you pass down the aisles, you may want to take a route inward to look at the cans and discuss sodium and sugar in cans, or down the frozen section to look at the frozen goods, or take a look at whole grain products. Bread and cereal tend to be in the center of the store, and so as you walk with the group, you will go down those aisles to look at those items. Finally, usually dairy is at the end or back of the store, and that is a great location to discuss sugar and dairy products such as yogurt, as well as lower fat dairy options. Let's watch together a start to a sample Cooking Matters at the Store tour.
I'd like to welcome you to Cooking Matters shopping tour today. It's a very big store here and there are so many products. We have to go around and look at the things you need. One thing I have to make clear to you, ask any questions you want. Nothing is silly, nothing is off the chart. Just ask me any questions and I'll try as much as possible to answer them for you.
A Shopping Matters tour is an opportunity for participants to learn new skills, discover new foods, and to share their experiences throughout their lives.
In the produce section, we discussed making half our plate fruits and veggies. We do this by talking together as a group about the pros and cons of 3 different forms of produce: fresh, frozen, and canned. And we seek to identify ways of purchasing fruits and veggies on a budget and using skills such as comparing unit prices. Here's a video showing how this might occur.
Now we're in the fresh produce section, and one of the things we want to see, we want to determine if there is a reason why I would want to purchase canned, frozen, or fresh. Let's take an example of that. We have here Brussels sprouts. Brussels sprouts is not in season during the summer months. Our Brussels sprouts is selling for $2.98 a pound. And now I have also a bag of frozen Brussels sprouts, which is about a pound. And it sells for $2.25. That's a difference of about 75 cents.
Brainstorming and discussing the pros and cons of the 3 forms of produce allows for participants to decide for themselves which forms best fit their needs. The best form of produce can depend on the unit price of that form of produce versus another. Use activities for participants to practice unit price comparison by looking at real products in the store. Carrots are a great example. You can also take notes in the fresh section, and when you get to the frozen, compare there. In this case, we have 3 packages of carrot examples that you might see in the produce section. They include a large 5-pound bag and 2 smaller bags, each 1 pound. Notice that, as is typical, convenience forms of produce or any product in the store, such as baby carrots, are much more pricey per pound. Have the participants use the skill by first explaining what unit prices are and where to look for them on the tag, and then have the participants decide which of these products is the best deal. As you walk around the store, you'll want to stop by the canned and frozen sections for produce. Canned and frozen have advantages including much longer shelf life, but they also can have sugar or salt added to them. In this example, the sliced peaches can have significant amounts of sugar added to them. The product on the left is in heavy syrup. The product on the right is in juice. Have participants look at cans, both cans like fruit that involve added sugar, and also at cans that have added sodium. Look at the back together and look at the ingredients. Especially with frozen, it's useful to make sure that only the advertised product, such as cauliflower, is in the ingredients instead of added sugar or salt. In the case of cans, it's important to start at the top and look at the serving size, because this is the amount that the nutrition label is referring to. Then look for the number of grams of sugar in the product. Participants will see for themselves how many more grams of sugar the product in heavy syrup has than the product in juice. A priority of the Cooking Matters at the Store tour is how to identify whole grain products, specifically those products that are made from a majority whole grains. With your group, you'll want to stop by different sections of the store that contain grains. The main ones are the bread section and the cereal section. There are also sections with other grains, such as rice. Have the group do activities such as reading bread labels together to identify which of the product is actually whole grain. In the cereal section, look at sugar. Discuss what whole grains are, the benefits of fiber, and practice comparing unit prices. Finally, give tips or have the group share tips with one another about how they keep whole grain foods from going bad and how they stretch their dollars with whole grain products. Since you're in the grocery store, you have the freedom of encouraging participants to select any products they want to look at. This is great for grains because there are so many products to choose from. And as you walk down the bread aisle, encourage participants to select those products they want to look at, either their favorites or the ones they want to investigate. Explain to participants that the way to identify a whole grain product is by looking at the first ingredient in the list. Participants may volunteer that first ingredient is the best one to look at because it is the most by mass in the product. Products that are majority whole grain will list the word whole in the first ingredient, and this is the best way to tell whether a product is really whole grain. Other indicators can include the quantity of fiber per serving. Note that the product on the left is not a whole grain because it starts with unbleached enriched wheat flour as the first ingredient. It also only has 3% of fiber, whereas the product on the right has 7%. You should start by asking the group to share what they have heard about whole grains and what they have heard about the difference between whole grains and refined grains. You may need to describe what whole grains are and what products might contain them, or what sorts of grains exist. It can be a good idea to have the whole grain model along to demonstrate the 3 parts of the whole grain and share why a whole grain is more nutritious. In the cereal section, have the participants select cereals they like or want to look at. Look at the serving sizes together and use that serving size as a way of calculating the amount of sugar in a bowl of cereal the participants might eat. They might have to multiply depending on how much they'd put in the bowl. See the varied grams of sugar in the different cereals and talk about alternative ways of making cereals sweet, such as adding fruit. On to protein. Protein can come from many different areas of the store. From nuts, from seeds, from the vegetables in the form of legumes, from grains, whole grains particularly, from dairy, from eggs. All these different sources of protein, and including meat, are ones that we can talk about on the tour. You'll have to decide where to guide the group to look at the different protein options. In the protein section, we emphasize the importance of variety, and we talk about lean protein options, both from among meat sources as a way of reducing saturated fat, and from other sources of protein from plants that don't involve saturated fat. It's very easy to talk about unit price comparison and practice unit price comparison skills with protein, particularly with the meat. And it's also a good idea to talk about non-protein sources as a way of getting lower unit prices and improving our health. Certain cuts of meat and meat products have less saturated fat than others. It can be helpful to look at the ground beef or ground turkey as a way of looking at the quantity of saturated fat in meat. In this case, it might not seem that 85% lean would have that much less saturated fat than 93%, but if you look at the back, the group will see how greater percentage of the percent daily value the 85% lean is, and why it's worth buying the lesser percentage fat beef. It's also the case that you're paying for the fat that then renders out as you cook the beef. You might have the group practice unit prices by comparing prices on fish. In this case, the package on the right is less expensive per pound, even though it seems pricier overall. Dairy typically concludes the content areas of the tour. The emphasis in dairy is to look at food labels for sugar content and for lowering saturated fat. Dairy is also a useful place in the store to practice unit prices, particularly with milk and yogurt containers. In this example, the products of yogurt are the same size. The difference is that the product on the right has, quote, fruit on the bottom. If you look at the back, the group can see what products are actually in the ingredient list, such as 3 types of sugar. They can also look at the total grams of sugar and compare between the 2 products. Discuss ways of making yogurt sweet without using added sugar. To conclude the tour, gather at the front of the store and complete the surveys together. Make sure the waivers are completed too. Pass out the $10 Hannaford gift cards, the grocery bags, and booklets. A good optional activity is to give participants the opportunity to do the $10 challenge, buying a bag of groceries to make a complete meal using that $10 Hannaford gift card. The following are videos from Share Our Strength demonstrating some tips for facilitating the tour. These tips are not so much about the actual content as about the way to deliver content and interact to best teach the skills in the tour.
A good way to encourage discussion is by asking open-ended questions and hands-on activities. If we look at the total fat in both packages, which one has the lowest percentage of daily value?
It would be this one right here.
If I were to make a selection between the two, which would you go for? And can you sum up why you would make that selection? Ask the participants to share what they know. You might be an expert on nutrition, on budgeting, on cooking, but they are the experts on their individual lives.
Do you have any questions?
I get WIC benefits, and I like to know how can I use my WIC benefits here.
Okay. Does anybody know anything about WIC benefits?
Yeah, I do now.
You do?
I used to receive those some months ago.
You might be asked questions that either you don't know the answer at that time or that are beyond your scope. For example, someone asks you a medical question. That would be something you would refer back to their treating physician. If it's something you're not certain of, don't be afraid to tell them you're not certain. You would check it out and get back with them upon your next meeting. Always focus on the positive.
I don't like Brussels sprouts.
How do you cook it?
I haven't cooked it. I've eaten someone else's Brussels sprouts, so I'm not sure.
Does anybody have a recipe that you think she will like?
Well, I cook Brussels sprouts, and how I make them, Siobhan, is I'll boil some vegetable broth, put a little seasoning in it with a little olive oil, let the water come to a boil, and then put the Brussels sprouts in and let them simmer. Let them cook down, and then all the flavors, and it tastes real good.
Thank you for watching this video on the Cooking Matters at the Store Tour traditional tour. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you really enjoy the tours you facilitate. Thank you so much.